awkward part of the lives here, Christy, where we just kind of go, "Is it live?" And it is, but we're also going to let some folks get a chance to hop in here, and I'm just going to verify us because what's that saying? Trust but verify. Have you ever heard that saying?
Oh.
I want to say it was Roosevelt. So I will, and not fact check that at all, and let people think that that's who said it. So Roosevelt said that thing I just said.
Just commit to it.
That's it. Connect to it. You're in. There you go. All right, cool. Christy Forsyth, rather. Jesus, it's so nice to hang out with you. It's so cool to see you. We have so many wonderful things that we're going to talk about tonight, all of them amazing. Let's start with you, if you don't mind. Would you mind introducing yourself for the audience here, not uber familiar with you?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Christy Forsyth. At the root of everything, I see myself as a helper. That's when you boil it all down, that's what I'm here to do, is to help. And so for several years, what that looked like for me was my background is as a licensed mental health counselor. So I did the counseling thing for a long time. And then when I was going through my spiritual awakening, I started to reconnect with intuitive gifts that I had experienced in childhood and again, in my late teen years, and things just started to really expand for me. So I was being shown at that time that I was being called to help people in a different way. And so it led me to eventually doing the work that I do now, which is, I call it soul therapy. So I pull from my background in mental health counseling, my experience with life coaching, my experience with energy healing modalities, and my psychic gifts, because that was what had come through for me really strongly during my awakening. I pull from all of those things and use that to help people to get from where they are to where they want to be, and to help people to navigate their own spiritual awakening. So I connect with angels and I connect with energy. Those are my two big things. So I let that lead the work that I do with people to help lead them through all of that.
Beautiful. Way to show up, way to just show up for yourself, for everything. So what did the process look like for you prepping your body for your spiritual awakening? Did you know, now hindsight, of course, being 2020, were there any prerequisites or any sort of indicators early on that there was about to be a pretty good shift? Maybe from this perspective, what they refer to as a tower moment or something like that in tarot. Did you experience any of that?
So for me, it wasn't an external tower moment. It was an internal tower moment. And so I was just at that time really living my life day to day. Every single day was pretty much the same. I can be a pretty routine person. And so I was doing that and feeling relatively happy with things in my life. And then all of a sudden I didn't, right? And I was looking at this job that I had and recognizing that no longer aligned for me, and looking at relationships in my life and recognizing that no longer aligned for me. There was just this calling from my soul that some things needed to be different. And what that looked like for me, and what it looks like for a lot of people I found, is this growing discomfort within myself, where I started to look around and ask, like, there has to be so much more to life than this, and what has to change? Something has to change. And so I started to ask questions, and I started to just feel this energy going outward, where I was seeking and searching and asking and exploring, and it just, one thing led to another.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
How recent, if you don't mind, was your spiritual awakening that you can remember? Was it fairly recent, or was there one early on, like in life, maybe around their teenage years or something like that you can remember as a kid?
So I had experiences with angels as a child, with angels and some other beings as well. And was very aware of energy, could feel energy, have always been an empath, all of those things. And so I was very connected with that in childhood, but I started to realize when I got into school and when I was interacting with friends, things like that, that they didn't really have these voices that talk to them or see these things with them. And so somewhere along the way that kind of got lost. And then I had another kind of mini awakening where I was starting to explore spirituality and explore a lot of the things that I'm doing now when I was around 18, 19, and was reading all kinds of books and things like that. But that time in my life, it looked really scary, right? Because I opened wide open. And so I started to have a lot of experience. At that time, I was connecting, I think, with a lot of heavier energy, a lot of darker energy, connecting with angels and light as well. But at the time, I didn't understand that I needed to set boundaries with that. And so I was having scary things happen in my room at night and all of that. So I ended up shutting that energy down simply with a boundary by saying, I don't want to connect in this way again. And pretty quickly that experience shifted.
Is anyone else in your family experienced this stuff? A grandmother perhaps, or anyone down the lineage, maybe some witchy stuff or anything that they've communicated to you?
Nobody that has communicated it to me. I think that both of my parents are incredibly intuitive. And I know that my mom has had some experiences, but nobody has labeled it in the same way.
Right. What's one example, if you don't mind? Did they label it as like sort of synchronous or coincidence or something like this?
Yes. Yeah. So for example, my dad was a
Or sort of the
detective for years. My dad was a detective, right? And he was a fantastic detective. And that was how he did it, he was able to tune into that stuff and navigate all of that. And my mom has had experiences with seeing beings and things like that as well, but had a lot of difficulty in managing her own energy field. So for her, she did kind of that same thing where she pushed that out.
It's interesting. So if you don't mind, what do your folks think about what you're doing now?
They love it. Yeah.
Do you find that maybe it's sort of an excuse for them to say, you know what, there is something cool going on here and I'm grateful you see it and are getting the feedback you're seeing? It's probably a safer time they're seeing you come out.
Yeah. And they're here now with this, right? And I think that at first, when I was first going through that process, I think that probably that looked a little crazy. I'm lucky to have parents who are really supportive of me overall. But I think there was a little like, what are you doing? What's this? And why are you making all these changes? And because a lot of things happened really quickly, or where I was making change after change after change. And so I think at first they were a little freaked out, but they have watched me grow with things and have watched how it's helped other people. And so they've really been supportive with it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What was your first memory of something extraordinary that you can remember, or did you even see it as that as a child? Or they're just sort of visitors that would visit you, or do you have sort of a moment where everything changed, where you're like, this is different?
For me, like it felt normal in childhood anyway. It felt really normal. It felt, I was aware of, for me back then, how I saw angels was more like moving light. And it was a lot of hearing them at that time, right? So I just had these energies that I interacted with all the time. And my earliest memory of that is actually, I can remember a time when I was potty training. And I can remember where the little potty was in the corner of my bedroom and them telling me, you have to get up and use the potty. Like I wanted to stay sleeping, right? But so that's my earliest memory of that.
It's like, I bet your parents were grateful for that, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm sure. Sheets early on. That's wild.
And I would do weird sleepwalking things. Every night I would get up and sleepwalk through the house, and it would always end with me putting my glass of water in the exact center of the hallway.
Really?
Yeah.
What is that? Okay.
I don't know.
It's interesting. And then water, of course, the emotional conduit energy. And so it's just interesting. I wonder if you were sort of charging them or powering them or giving them a gift, sort of like kids leave milk and cookies for Santa Claus almost,
Yes. Yeah. That's what it feels like to me, is some kind of conductor of energy. And it felt like the placement of that was really important.
Yeah. That's interesting. And sort of like a relationship, just same thing as like Santa Claus, but people with Bigfoot too are, leaving it little gifts in the woods and things like that. Then it's coming back and they're swapping sticks and stuff. So it's just interesting. Any poltergeist activity in your house at all that you can remember?
Yes, that was when I talk about things getting scary. That was not when I was little, but when I was about 18 or 19 years old is when I opened up again. And a lot of that stuff was, I lived in this house that was pretty haunted at the time. And I started to have all of these experiences with like faces floating at me in the middle of the night. I would wake up screaming a lot. A lot of voices around in the house and things like that. It was just kind of a gross feeling energy, very heavy energy.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Absolutely interesting.
Yeah. But I also had during that time period experiences with angels.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was one night in particular that I was really worried about a friend who had essentially threatened suicide. And so I was really concerned about them, and like they were very, very important to me, and I could not get in touch with them, to the point that got in touch with the police. They told me, we've got to wait a while to file a missing persons report. And so all I could do was go home and wait. And so I was laying in my bed and just crying and terrified, absolutely terrified. And all of a sudden, outside of my window, there was all of this light. And at the time, I was living in an apartment on the second floor. And then I saw this light that was in the shape of an angel going all the way up to the second story. It was absolutely huge. And then I heard the voice telepathically, and it said, everything's going to be okay. But what was more powerful than the voice was the feeling, because it was this energy that just washed over me completely, this light and this knowing that everything was going to be okay. And even though I had been really scared, I was able to fall asleep almost immediately then, and found out the next day that everything was okay, that friend had been taken to the hospital and was getting the help that they needed, and that all worked out. But it was just such a beautiful experience to connect in that way. And that was where I started to connect with angels in more of a solid form, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask what may seem like to be an obvious question, but I'm just curious about your answer. Yeah. Have you ever considered them to be extraterrestrials, presenting themselves as angels? Or do you feel that they're legit angels and that extraterrestrials are something different and that you're interfacing with something separate?
So I think that there's both. So when I've asked the angels this question, this is the answer that I got, which I find absolutely fascinating. So there are angels that are this extension of the energy that I call God, right? This extension of God's love, pure light, just this divinity. And so that is one energy, one category. And then there are extraterrestrials that also appear in a similar sense. They look very similar. A little bit of it's a subtle difference in the energy, but a little bit of a different energy, because they're just not quite as high vibrational. They're very high vibrational, just not quite as high vibrational as regular angels, I guess. So there's both.
It's amazing. Apologies, there's sort of an internet glitchy thing we got going over here. If it continues, we will reschedule, but thank you. We're hearing everything you're saying. I just want to make sure there's no sort of awkwardness and communication between you and I.
Okay.
But it's fascinating so have you had contact with both?
That
you feel?
I think so. Yes. So I think the contact that I've had most of the time has been with the angels, and not the extraterrestrial or angels.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I have asked, can I feel that? Because how I interpret energy, how I can connect with energy is to feel it. So I've just said, like, show me what that feels like versus what this feels like, because I want to understand it all. And that way I know, what I'm dealing with when I'm connecting with those energies.
Right. And now I'm just thinking about angels for aliens. You know what I mean? Like they're religious order or just some sort of guardian angels that have come visit little baby grays in bed at night and teach them to go potty, in the glip glorp rather than in the bed. You know what I mean? I wonder if there's some sort of guiding religious archetypes that they participate in as well. I'd be curious if you'd ask the angels for me next time you holler at them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what's their deal? Do their angels are they gray with like wings, and their tiny little wings with these big gray heads? What would their angels like? I think that'd be adorable. Yeah.
Yeah. I probably, I think honestly, they're just energy, right? So they can appear however they're meant to. And so I imagine that for, different groups, like whoever they're presenting to, they're going to present in a different way.
Yeah.
And so they're going to present usually in a way that's going to bring us calm and peace, or that's going to connect with us in the ways that we need to connect. So how I've always seen they're so beautiful. I've heard some people experience them without faces, and that to me is like terrifying. I don't want to see faces.
I'm going to share screen while you talk about this and ask you a question, but keep
going. Okay. I don't want to see that, So I've experienced them as just these absolutely beautiful beings of light, and they have faces, they have wings, but again, it's just energy. It's just how they're presenting for me.
Yeah, that's what I find so interesting about this is this idea of like this right here. Like some people say that this is what angels look like. Some description in the Bible and everything, that this, and some people have actually seen this. Like, look at you, this little, I don't know if you could see this on the screen, this little character at the bottom. And, this is what, whenever you say angels appear to me, a lot of people think this over here, but I'm thinking of this right here. Have you seen anything like
this? I've never seen that.
Have you heard people's reports of that though? That's what
I have. Mm-hmm.
Because it's not, I guess, useful for this thing to show up like that to you, right? You may miss the point of the visit because that's a little distracting, I would think.
You're going to run in the other direction, right? And who knows? I mean, maybe at the core of it, that might be how they present, but I see them so much more as like what you would imagine an angel to look like.
Right.
And that's terrifying. I don't want to see that.
This one here?
Yeah.
This is you do want to see this or do not?
What? I don't want to see the wheel eye.
Oh, yes. No, in real life. My apologies. I thought I was about to click on something. You're like, I don't want to see that. I'm like, okay.
No. I mean, in to have that manifest.
In real, yeah.
I'm good.
Reality,
I'm all
in your experience.
Yeah. But I have seen.
And this right here, though, is another example of this.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of this wild looking, thing. And maybe they do look like this. They just present to you like this because, again, it scared the hell out of you. If this thing showed up, you'd be like, oh,
I don't want that standing in my bedroom at night. That's for sure.
Right. And this even has a little virgin withered angel and then the Chad biblical angel. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild. And it's sort of into the Ezekiel thing, which is the wheel within a wheel, right? But then even that ended up probably being a UFO, which is just really interesting. I find this place fascinating, Christy.
Yeah. And so we're talking about that both exist. I would guess that what people have experienced with those images, perhaps that's more that energy of the extraterrestrial version of the angels. But how that's been presented to me is that they also present in a similar way in terms of how they appear to people.
Yeah. That's what's so interesting. I think that this is such a big turning point in the phenomena and the understanding is this, that we have the understanding that it's not these separate things that are like, okay, over here and this is over there. We're sort of being able to see this as a dichotomy, multiple things existing in the same place at the same time. And so therefore these entities or whatever seem to want to offer us that experience as well in multiple forms. And I find like you that this place is so much more magical than we've been told, or that they prefer, we believe, I suppose, is one of the ways to put that. But this is it's just interesting. And then you have these type things where these angels have appeared in clouds, and you have these sort of figures that resemble. I mean, this is a whole, like, I don't know. It looks like somebody that jumped off their roof with some duct tape wings to him, doesn't it? Rather Icarus figure that's got his shit figured out. And same here. There's sort of these ideals that angels are physical and flying around. And so then, that's my next question. Like, did they appear like this to you? Like you could reach out and shake their hand, and like they could, when they flap their wings, wind would displace and stuff like that? Is that how they? seen or more?
They have. To be honest, like I'm looking at that picture and I'm thinking, I've never seen one flying necessarily, but I've had them standing physically in the room with me many times. Now, that happened more when I was going through my awakening, the most recent awakening, because they were wanting to really let me know we're here, we're really here, we're guiding you with this, we're guiding you to do this. And so it's a lot of energy for them to manifest in physical form like that. It's a lot. So now that we've learned how to work with each other so easily, I don't have that experience as often. Every once in a while, when they really want to get my attention, or they want for someone else that I'm with to feel their energy really strongly, they will manifest in physical form.
Wow.
It's so beautiful. They want us to know that they're here, that they're with us, that we all have angels.
Why don't you think more people see them? I'm curious. Why don't I see them, for instance? Like, I'm on board with this. I think it'd be cool. Like, why don't I see them? Do you think?
I don't know. I think that maybe eventually we will.
Yeah.
Eventually that we'll find ourselves walking with them more. I think that it starts with intention, so I think simply by you saying that out loud helps to open that up and helps you to work with them. And you can see them in your mind's eye anytime that you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a nice comforting thing, to know something's always with you.
Mm-hmm.
I know they're always speaking in different ways, and people receive signs of different things. And even if it's like, oh, I know that was from something, and it's an obvious sign for you, it'd still be kind of dope every now and then. And I'm absolutely open to receive this universe. Is for one, to appear, but not like jarring. You know what I mean? I'm not a fan of that. So that's my next question. Whenever things appear to you, do you feel them first? Is there sort of a tap on the shoulder in a very calm way, or are they just saying Christy, and then they appear in your room and you're just like, oh my God, you like spill something on yourself?
That would terrify me if they just like popped in.
Yeah, you have to have boundaries, right?
There is so there's an energy. I always use the word that they glamour you a little bit. That's been my experience anyway.
UFO phenomena, by the way, and vampires.
In that there's first this ease of energy where you just feel, remember, they're this extension of divine love. So it starts with that feeling, right? And it's that awareness of that feeling. And that feeling washes over you so strongly that all of a sudden it doesn't matter. There isn't fear. There's no room for fear to exist, I guess is the best way to describe it. So all of a sudden you have an angel standing in front of you, but there's no space for that fear to exist. So you don't feel afraid. Now, I've had experiences with other beings, extraterrestrials, for example, where I'm really uncomfortable with having them standing in my bedroom or with seeing them. That to me has made me feel very uncomfortable. So I've set some boundaries around that. Or even one of my spirit guides tried to physically manifest in my bedroom one night, and I about climbed up the headboard, and I was just like, nope, I can't look at you. Please just, please come into my meditations. That works for me.
Boundaries, right. And then there are people who are just like, I want to see something so bad, and then they, either don't, or it's because of the pedestal elements of it, right? It's because you're so up and you're so available for it that you don't chase it. So it's like, you're not the stage 4 clinger, you know what I mean, with the phenomena. You're just like, yeah, I'm here if you want to be, whatever. And so it wants to approach you like that in exceptional ways. Do you feel like you'll ever get to a time, and it's kind of foreshadowing here, but that you ever get to a time where you could have one manifest in front of you, perhaps even call one of your spirit guides in, and just have an actual face-to-face, sort of a conversation? Make sure she puts a face on, all that good stuff.
Yeah, put a face on.
Wear a face. Thank you.
Maybe. I feel so at peace with the angelic energy, and it's my energy is such an extension of that we just kind of vibe with each other, right? And it works really well. Whereas I'm happy to connect with those other things in meditation and to work with that as that's coming through. But I don't know, maybe someday I'll feel ready for that. I did have one night this extraterrestrial I woke up to find him standing by my bed with this blue lantern, and was clearly doing some things to adjust to my energy. And I started screaming, understandably so, right? It was a little scary. He looked totally irritated with me, silly human, now I have to deal with this. So And we had just sort of this very quick telepathic interaction. And I basically said, hey, like, do you have to be here? And he basically said, I'm doing some things on you. Just relax. And so somehow I rolled over and just said, do what you have to do. And eventually fell asleep experiencing that energy.
Wow. Were there any physiological changes? Like, did you have I don't know, an ulcer or like a canker sore or something just went away the next day?
It felt like a significant shift in my vibration. And what was interesting was that my eyes the next day looked lighter. I find like as I level up, my eyes will
The shade?
lighter. Yeah. Yeah. Like my eyes are constantly changing. It's interesting.
Dude, they started black, right? You're like, I actually have, something to check out now. Yeah, I've been ascending. If nothing else,
Uh-huh.
the pigment. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Have you, I mean, well, then that's interesting too, because, perhaps there's a physical component to this, whereas your physical eyes alter, you're able to see differently. The colors are perceived, perhaps energies differently. Do you
Yeah.
feel
That makes a lot of sense.
that's awesome?
Uh-huh.
What are your thoughts on magic?
So magic in terms of like utilizing things to create something in that way.
Yeah, with the C, not the K. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that we live in a really magical world, and I'm a big believer that we're powerful co-creators here in this world. So I'm a big believer in using magic, but using magic in terms of working with our higher power to create what's for our highest and best good. Because I think sometimes like we can get wrapped up in, I want to manifest this specific relationship. And we're doing that on a human level, and on a soul level, our soul is like, hell no, that's not the right fit for you. That is not in your highest and best good. Right. And so I believe in it in terms of creating the life that we're meant to have, the absolute best life possible, the absolute best version of ourselves possible. And so I think that when we lean into that and we're working with that co-creation energy, it can be incredibly powerful. I'm a big believer in allowing ourselves to flow and be led, because I think that when we lean into that, letting our higher power lead all of that, it's really powerful. But I also believe that when we have a desire, a lot of times that desire can be based in this knowing of our soul chart, or this knowing of the direction that we're meant to go, something we're meant to have, or something that we already have on another timeline.
What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that it's a timeline thing? Do you think that this is one progression or multiverses, and you tune into the one that's already existing, and like there's an infinite number of them? Like, what are your thoughts on sort of reality?
I'm not sure yet. I feel like I change my mind all the time about this.
It's a great place to be.
Scrambles my brain a little bit, right? So I'm always feeling into that and learning about that. And I do think that there are other timelines that we're existing on here now. And I do think that it's possible. I've had my own experiences where I feel like I've done a timeline jump or a timeline shift. So I definitely believe in that, but I don't know exactly how all of that works. What do you think?
Oh, how long is this thing? Yeah,
It's a big topic.
I think a lot. I mean, reality is the ultimate topic, right? I think I think it's a sea of potentiality. I think it's possibilities. And I think whatever you feel is within your scope of believability, like as far as like what you're capable of, plus what this reality is capable of producing for you to experience, that's what you experience. But and then you need just some practice at it. So like you with your gifts, they don't just pop in, they don't just show up and like shit's running around. You can see UFOs and shit all the time. Maybe, when you're young and you can mentally handle it. But as you go through sort of the tar and feather programming of becoming a human being, adjusted to a sick society kind of a thing, and you get all your programming, I think the analogy I've used is that we're born as just these incredible beings of light. But when you look around at your mom, your ego structure, facilitators, your teachers, your priests, even your siblings, they all have like black tar and feathers and shit stuck all over them, and it's dimmed out their light. You can't even see that they're light bodies at all, but we all start as these incredible light bodies, just have the metaphor. And as you go on, you say, You know, when your parents say, like, you may have pointed out, hey, I see an angel. And then your mom goes, no, 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 you don't. You know, you don't, because you don't want to see that. People are going to think whatever. And so you take a piece of tar and feather and you stick it to yourself. And then whenever somebody says, hey, I'm not worthy of this, or you can't think that way, or your creativity is dumb or something, you just stick all these things to yourself. And you do it to fit in, because that's what society does. And it feels like that's just the way. And then it's kind of hardwired into us to be these social creatures. So exile is like worse than death, right? So this idea of not fitting in and not wearing the tars and feathers like everyone else does, but they're hot, they're uncomfortable. Every time you put one on, it sucks. Like, why is everybody wearing this shitty thing? But then I feel that our awakenings occur when a gap in that, or somebody walks over to you and something happens and it pulls one of those off. And maybe you get like some trauma or something happens to you, and it causes a spiritual awakening to where some of that shit knocked off you and some of the light pokes through. And then you remember a little bit and you just start peeling it off. And that's a painful process, right? And so this is sort of how I feel about this experience. And in that way, then it feels to me like this is a game, a ride. It feels like all this is facilitating something greater, which is why it can appear to some people as angels, some people as Bigfoot, some people as nothing at all, some people as an alcoholic's father, you know what I mean? An abusive home. Like the phenomena and the magic, I feel, is all around you all the time. And so it just depends on your choice of reality and how you choose to view it, and which it presents itself. Which is why when you said it's confusing, it changes all the time. That's great. Like, what a beautiful place to be. Does that make you feel unstable at all, or?
No, I kind of love it. To me, it feels like an adventure in that way, right? Because it's like every question that I feel like I answer, I have 20 more questions.
Yeah.
And it's just so expansive. And I think that that's really, really cool. I think that's part of the magic is to just keep growing and asking and exploring. And I think that as human beings, we barely tap into that. And it's so much fun to me.
It is. This place is a game. Do you see it as like a ride, like fun, you know?
Yeah. I mean, of course there's heaviness and there's challenges sometimes, right? But I think that we came here. I think that's part of the experience collectively right now, is for us to learn, how do we create heaven on earth here now? Because I think that it's available to us. It's just, we've been told that it's not. And so as we're uncovering, as we lean into the adventure of it, I think that we do start to connect with that more.
Dude, yes, right? Yeah.
And I think that that's so much fun, just even in terms of healing, when we're talking about different timelines and things like that, or playing with time. One thing that I've been doing a lot of with my clients, but also myself, is a lot of inner child healing work stuff. And to be able to visualize going back to moments in our childhood that were really challenging, and to offer us now, that support to that child. And I think that there's an energy that can be healed back there in the past now, through that process. And it's just really cool to me, like that it's all happening now, where people will even have experiences of remembering that shift in the energy in that time or whatever. I just think that's so much fun.
Totally. And then there's this thing again in the phenomena where you be walking around the woods right before a sighting or some event occurs, you'll hear like the Oz effect. And it's literally the absence of silence, like everything, no winds blowing, no animals are moving around. It's deathly, like obviously weirdly silent. And so it's this interesting thing that corresponds with really interesting experiences that people have. And I just find it fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Now you mentioned timeline jumping. So I'm curious, I love hacks like this and timeline, quantum jumping, shower portal stuff. So do you have any of your favorite timeline jumping techniques or just fun things that you like to do you want to share?
I do. So I like to take some time and write things down. This is what I now call into my experience. I always like to make sure I do this or something better, right? Because I like to leave that wiggle room, right? Again, for that co-creation, for that bigger vision. So I will do all of that. And then I will take a glass of water, and I will hold the glass of water. And while I'm holding that glass of water, I think about those things that I'm manifesting. And a lot of times I will hold the glass of water and read that out loud too. So the vibration is going into the water. And then I drink the whole glass of water.
I love this. I do this with my water as well. We drink so much water. Dude, I drink like, this is a 40 ounce, I think. And we drink 4 or 5 of these a day. Yeah, 5 or 6 sometimes. But Also, though, I'll do these little concoctions with what's it called? Cayenne pepper. Do you do this? Have you introduced cayenne into your diet yet? Oh my God, girl, check this out. So you just take a couple of ounces of water, right? In just a glass, whatever, a small glass. Put quarter teaspoon of cayenne pepper, just straight cayenne pepper in just water. Okay. You can put in anything you want, but I just do it in water and mix it around. And as I'm mixing it in, I'm saying, thank you for healing my body. Thank you for curing me. I am whole, perfect, strong, powerful, loving, harmonious, and happy. All of those things, same thing out loud, thank it, and then down it goes. So this is a quantum timeline jump thing as well. It's very intentional. And same with this, we put Celtic sea salt in our water to mineralize it, right? So we're not just flushing all of our body of nutrients, just drinking regular water. And so same thing in that it has the crystalline properties and very intentional with how we drink water. Now, do you do this with the intention of literally that's your timeline jump hack? It's not to fortify yourself. You're saying, hey, by the time I get done with this thing, I'm going to be somewhere different. Have you, what's anything noticeable come of that you want to share?
Nothing to the, in a really concrete way, but it's a feeling, right? For me, it's all about the feeling. So I always find, and I am very aware of how I use that and how often I use that, right? Because if I was doing that every single day, I don't think that it would feel so special. And I think that would lose a little bit of the magic to it. So I'm very intentional about when I use that and how often I use that. And I notice that usually for me, it's like the next morning when I wake up, I feel like I'm waking up differently. I feel like I'm waking up better.
Yeah.
And that I've moved that energy in the direction of those things that I'm creating.
This is what's so fascinating about it, because if you look at it like levels of vibration, right? Not a higher scalably, just higher hierarchically, just spatially. And if you think about it like that, you're vibrating at such minute little frequencies all along the way. So therefore, yes, everything would be represented here. And just whatever you're choosing in any moment of timeline, it feels like, then you're just vibrating into the version of you that you're a match to. You know what I mean? This is why you get what you are, not what you want, those kind of things. And so it feels with this, then you're on a cellular level rewriting your DNA with that water. And so you're changing to be a vibrational match for the system you want to be in, not like to just teleport yourself there. You're changing your whole biology to be able to be there and hold that energy. That's so fascinating about this. And this is why, like, I feel the stair step is very important to this. I've sort of used the metaphor of like a hot air balloon, for the ascension process. And like, you're in your hot air balloon, right? And the trauma, the baggage, the things like that, just whatever weigh you down to keep you in a lower state vibrationally. It's like an altitude thing. And it doesn't mean that if you're in a root chakra or whatever, it's not bad. It's just where you're at. That's vibrationally. Yeah, that's what you're pinged to. That's where, if you want to change it, cut some of the sandbags off and you'll ascend. You need to be lighter. So, people fill these, or, we've all done it. Programming fills all these sandbags and it weighs you down. But as soon as you figure it out, you start cutting sandbags. But the thing is, you just run through the knife or something, cut them all. You can't hold it. It's an energy that, the example is like the people that win $400 million in the lottery and then go broke the next week. You know what I mean? So that being able to hold that energy is so important. And this is something that you're great at being able to walk folks through, is that scale, saying, hey, just take your time, like be patient with this, because you don't want just an entity popping into your bedroom like that and having to dial it back. It's interesting that it just seems like that's what you're doing. So I love your hack. It's brilliant. Do you consider it a hack or just something you do?
Yeah, I mean, maybe both, right? Yeah, it's definitely something that I use based on intuition. So I let my intuition lead that whenever I feel called to do that. So I think that part of that is an intuitive awareness that I'm ready for that shift.
Yeah.
Now it's like I wait for that intuitive prompt, and then it's like, okay, so now tonight is when we're going to do that, right? Because like you're saying, it's this progression, it's this stair step. Because I think also our physical bodies can't handle it. If we were to just go straight up, I like there has to be this progression. I'm watching that happen with people now, where there's been so much with the energy that's adjusting our bodies to be able to hold more light, and people's bodies are having a tough time with that.
Yes.
It feels really overwhelming.
Yes. And it's this thing I've talked about elation, like stretching your balloon for elation. A lot of us are geared for trauma and chaos and things like that. So we're comfortable there, even though we bitch about it. But it's like, do you know what true elation is? You know that you can really be true and powerful and really surrender to the process and feel confident in it. And that's a whole different thing. Like I meditated for a month straight, and I'm not a sit down meditator. I'm a walk. We have a labyrinth thing I've told you about. And so I'm doing these walking things. And for a month straight, that's it. I said, okay, I'm done manifesting. Like I'm done with like I know it's on the way, blah, blah, blah. What I really want to experience here, what I'm calling in, not want to experience, because I did experience it, is my highest ability and capacity to hold elation and the highest joy that I can hold. And I talked to Nicole about this, Nicole Eaton, shout out, on her show. And it was about this idea that my grandmother used to say, don't pray for patience, honey, because you're not going to get patient. You're going to get the situations that suck that you need to be patient through, right? You acquire the virtue through the situations you call in by declaring you want to be that thing. So if you're saying to the universe or your higher self anything, you get to a point in this and you start, feeling smart, you could say, fine, I want to know how happy I can feel. Show me what elation feels like on a way that would scare me. And you know what happened? I got it. And it scared the shit out of me. And I'm crying on the floor in joy and elation and being the happiest and like shaking that I've ever been, just from pure joy and elation. So this is another thing that I don't think a lot of it gets brought up, but your ability to hold joy and the things that you deserve and your, worthiness. Have you experienced any of that?
Yeah. I think that it definitely, I think like what you're saying, it's not necessarily what we're used to.
Yeah.
And so probably the closest for me in terms of experience, it has been when I connect with angelic energy, because that's just, elation is the perfect word for it.
Yeah.
It's so powerful, but it's so different from what we experience here on Earth at other times that it's almost an adjustment. It's beautiful, but it's an adjustment.
Yes. Have you ever, you don't have to answer if you're not comfortable with psychedelics. Are you a psychonaut at all? Have you mushrooms?
I haven't, no.
Okay. It's a similar experience in the way that there's access to something and you can't articulate it when you come back. It's one of those things that you can have there, but not when you come back. Sort of like when you go to Italy or something. Like you can have that meal there in that cafe, but you can't bring it back with you. You know what I mean? It's just not going to be the same. And so it does feel like these experiences. So the next question for you here is the subjectivity of this damn thing. Like the fact that people report it being so different, that some people can see angels like you do, and some people see Bigfoot, or some people see ghosts or something like that, or some people see the eye thing with the damn eyes rolling around it, and that's what has said, hey, I'm an angel. And so the subjectivity of this, again, being able to be presented in any way that the people need. So what's the deal with the cast of characters in your mind? Why isn't it one or two things that we all just sort of go, yeah, that's what it is? Do you think that that's a thing, or there's a reason behind it?
I think that Earth is like such an eclectic melting pot of energies, right? So I think that, yes, a lot of us have lived past lives here, but I think so many of us have lived past lives in other places. And I think this time on Earth now is all of these energies that have come forward to support this process of the ascension of the planet. And so because of that, I think that it's such a blend of different energies coming in.
Yeah.
So I think that some of that is like, who's helping us? Like, what does our team look like? Because however I've experienced it with people has been that we all come here with a team, that we never come here alone, that we come here with a team of supports. But in my experience, that looks very different. We all have spirit guides. From what I've seen, we all have angels, but then beyond that, it's such a mix of things. Like sometimes I don't know what I'm looking at with people in terms of when I'm connecting with their spirit team. So it's so interesting.
It is in the way that they're processed. So when you connect, because you facilitate this, and all the ways, again, guys, to find her is going to be located down in the show description. Your amazing website, discoveryourawakening.com, is awesome. Like, you do just such great work. It's so well presented. You're just beautiful information. You're warm. Folks, definitely check this out. Links down in the show notes for sure. It's what do you, okay, let me ask it this way. When people come to you, do you experience their entities the way they do, or do you experience them the way that yours can communicate with you to help them? Does that make sense? Like if somebody comes to you and says, I see Saint Germain, does Saint Germain come visit you and have a conversation with you? Or is it one of your guides that says, actually, I'm going to be representing Saint Germain on this. This is sort of what's really going on, and that's how they're perceiving it. Do you have a peek behind the curtain when it comes to their?
So it's interesting the way that my gift has progressed, because it used to be more like that, right? But what I found is that when we learn how to work with the energies, they don't have to show up in the same way. So I got to a place where it just started to be like, I just like trust this, right? And I don't need to know exactly who, what, where this is coming from. I just need to know it's of the light, right? Like that's my boundary. And so for me, it's become such an easier flow in that it just flows through me. I'm just aware of what I need to know. And it's actually, I have to like take a step back to separate the energies almost, right? So I kind of let that flow through, but I used to experience it more compartmentalized, I guess.
You know what it reminds me of?
Uh-huh.
Have you ever seen panda enclosures, right? Where the people put on panda suits to go in and handle the pandas so that they look like one of them? Have you ever seen
No.
this? We're gonna pull up some things while we talk about this, and because it's number one, adorable.
It sounds adorable.
But I'm making a point here with it. Okay, so these people, I just pulled up some. Okay, just before I'm going to share this with y'all because it's adorable. There are people who, hang on, I think this actually, hang on. Okay, mostly what they do is this in zoos and things like this, so that they can give medical attention to the animal and things like this. Have you ever heard that pandas probably aren't real? Have you ever heard of this?
No.
You and I are gonna go in this, not tonight, maybe.
I love it.
We may touch on it. Anyway, so these people wear these panda suits, okay? And if you can imagine this, right? You're a dude, you get a panda suit on, you work at the zoo, you're like, I'm this guy right here. And you go in and you just like hang out with the pandas, okay? Now, the reason I say this is because this is sort of your spirit team right here.
Uh-huh.
Panda, okay? It's a dude in a panda suit.
Yeah.
But this panda thinks it's a damn panda and it's good enough to get the job done. Now, what I like about what you're saying here is that this is how things had been presented to us for a long time, is this idea that this is what our guides are. It's like they're real, from the panda's perspective. But how we're speaking about this now and the way you're interpreting this is it's not this, because it doesn't need to be anymore. Could you imagine this dude getting up in the morning and going, look, I know I look fly as shit in this thing. Look at this pose. This is a profile picture for sure. So this dude's like, dude, I know I'm pumped about this, but the pandas don't need me to put this hot ass thing on anymore. It's distracting from my message. They view me as separate, but if they could view me as me and I could just be me, we could get a lot more done here. And so it feels like this is where we are with this and where you are in giving folks the freedom to, and how you're able to interpret the energies. And maybe some people are still seeing things as panda suits, and that's fine. But maybe eventually, like where you are, you don't have to. And you can just say, look, thank you for the panda suit thing. That was awesome and useful, and I loved it. But you don't have to put this thing on anymore. And we can just be here with one another. I think it's a cool way that you put that. And when you were talking about it, I just thought of this.
Yeah, what a great way to teach that. I love that.
Pandas, they're not real. It's one of my favorite. There's a guy named Owen Benjamin. I'll send you some stuff. We won't do it tonight.
Yeah, I'm totally curious about that now.
So much fun. It is so cool. I'm this close to just playing one of his videos for the rest of this, but we won't. Okay. Because he's like jet fuels bullshit, which is brilliant, by the way, because the way bees fly and all this stuff is very interesting. What are your thoughts on flat Earth? What do you think this is? You think it's round or what?
I think with everything, it's just perception. I don't know that any of it's real, I don't know that it's flat or round. I think maybe it might just be energy, right? Just kind of like what we're talking with the guides. Like it's just this presentation of energy. But I do know that when I've done meditations where I've traveled down, almost accidentally, I've stumbled into some cool stuff that's going on in the middle of the earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on, bring this. Let's have it.
I was just trying to do like a basic grounding in my meditation and let my tree roots grow deep down into the earth. Right. And I guess I went pretty deep. And got down there, and there was I was greeted by these beings who actually seemed very surprised that I was there at the time. They're like these little, the energy that I felt was the energy of like elementals, nature spirits, fairies, gnomes, all of that stuff, right? Like they have a different energy than angels. And it's like a similar energy to that. And I think that there's just all of these little beings there, but it's like this whole world that's in there.
What do you think of like the idea that this is sort of a realm thing, like Dante's Inferno, to where there's different levels, and basically there's like a realm access for these entities, right? Like Bigfoot has a section, Fae have a section, and maybe it's just sort of stacked in this way, but there's bleed over, sort of like in a rainbow, right? It doesn't go, one color then the other. There's a fade over, and there's sort of a blur that crosses, the line, and that's that veil or whatever between the two, inhabited dimensions. But it's interesting in this way, though, that it's more of a physical. Did you get the sense that they were from the earth in this place, or like a dimension of it or something?
It was hard to explain with words. It was a very different energy. It felt actually very high vibrational, but different. It was it felt very similar to what I would call like more when I connect with like fourth dimensional energy, that kind of stuff.
It's a little darker, a little heavier.
A little, but lighter than us. Lighter than us. It's the same energy that I feel when I connect with the energies of like fairies and gnomes and things like that. Like it's that same, I can feel it.
Yeah.
And I could feel that was like the only part of it that I saw, but I was aware that there was like this whole world there, this whole other experience.
You know what's so cool about this? Have you seen Game of Thrones?
Mm-mm.
Ever? Okay. Have you seen, then we're going to go over the intro. So the wife and I watched, I mean, this is years ago when it came out. We're not TV people anymore, but we used to. And so we watched the first season of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
This opening credit scene, I want to show you something, and just curious to see. We're not going to play the music or whatever. We can talk over it. So this is the opening credit scene for Game of Thrones, okay? And this is the environment, and see if you pick anything up from this. See the land in the back, how it swoops up and away from you?
Mm-hmm.
Almost like you're on the inside of a ball.
Yeah.
The surface of something that's concaved away from you.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Whenever I look at the background and I see the land sweeping up like that, I'm thinking of inside of a sphere, inner Earth. And so if you think about this as like Middle Earth or some sort of different time period, maybe it was this time period, maybe it was thousands of years in the future, you know what I mean, in inner Earth, not on our Earth.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a fascinating concept. And then, when you look, then there is the center sun that they say is at the middle of the Earth, if it is a round sphere, and there's a bunch of stuff in there. Now, this again is another scene. You see the land swoop up and away from you, like you're on the inside of a ball. And this kind of stuff's like out in front of you. So it's just interesting whenever I look at things like this, because the first time we ever saw this, I was like, oh my God, that's inner Earth. Because I've been looking at this shit for like over 20 years. So
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by it. So it just jumped out at me. I was like, oh my God, that looks, because look at how the land is like, yeah. And then the center sun is represented. So I just think that it's an interesting way to kind of visually articulate this. And it's so under the radar. You know what I mean? It's just in the back. If you pick it up, you pick it up. I just thought it was interesting. Wanted to kind of show you there, see what you thought. But the idea of inner Earth has always fascinated me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So whenever I asked about that, like a big part of that is like that they have a specific energy that they're working toward, or there's a specific, like it's an energy holder, I guess is the best way to describe it. Like there's a specific vibration, like we're all working together.
Yeah.
Create this ascension and this experience here now.
It's like we're individual chakra, like our realm is a chakra,
Yeah.
This chakra, but now it's elevating and we're raising our chakras. So we're all just sort of shifting up one, you know what I mean? To experience what that chakra point and to hold that frequency is. And it feels like that's sort of what we're pinging through here, these vibrational level ups. It's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a comforting thing too, because there's no like, I don't know, I guess way to fuck this up. It just feels to me that we're all just doing our best with the information we have at the time. And so to feel like that you're going to be punished forever for making decisions here based on the information you have, which is what you're capable of understanding, like it's just silly to me. When did
Mhm.
that idea vacate your reality?
Uh, I don't know. I think for me, like I've always felt this faith and this trust. And I definitely moved away from that spiritual connection many times in my life. But so I think for me, it was this most recent time when I stepped into my awakening. There was just like I've had so many opportunities to stretch my faith and to stretch my trust. And I think that when you really connect with this energy, this higher power that is light and love, there's this understanding of like there just isn't punishment, right? Like you just feel so held. And so you just know when you really let that soak into your soul, you know.
How are you able with your discernment to know the difference between good energy and bad energy when you're given the information? How do you know you're not being bamboozled, you
You
know?
can feel it. You can feel it very
Yeah.
clearly. Yeah. Yeah. Now, I will say that I was created to see the light in everything,
Okay.
right? So there have been many times in my life where I have been bamboozled, where I have been fooled by that. But I don't necessarily know that it's being fooled. I think it's more that I see the light and it's harder for me to see the heavy aspects of that energy. But I do think like when we tune into that, when we're asking for that, when we're consistently checking in with ourselves and with our body. How is my body interacting with this person, this energy, this space, this place? When we do that consistently, I think that we do have that discernment. We do have that awareness to know what's best for us, what's not, that kind of stuff, right? We're always being led with that.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that discernment. That's the mother of it, isn't it? Because you need to be bamboozled a bit to sharpen that. Like you got to flex
Uh-huh.
that muscle, but you got to get sort of the all right, fool me once, shame on me, that kind of thing. Um, it's just an interesting thing to acquire here. How confident are you in your discernment moving forward? Like just in any situation you come across, like what's your percentage, do you think?
I would say 85%.
God, that's great. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
That's an
And
awesome.
the other 15% is like that I do have a stubborn streak to me.
Okay.
I know that my angels are like, come on, right? But this is my humanness. And I think that a lot of people, all of us on some level will have like, we can hold on to things so tightly and just think like, no, this is the way that it has to be, or this is the way that I want it, or this is the thing, and or this is how it has to happen. And I'm way better at that now, at not trying to control that so much. But still, I catch myself doing it.
What is one maybe that we can help you release? I can give you some new perspective on. What do you got? I'm a channel Muse for you as the mirror right now. Maybe I can help.
So what do you mean?
Just
Sorry.
something that's limiting you in that way, like something that you find is a trigger point for you that is maybe something that's greeting you quite often. Doesn't even have to be super personal. Just honestly, anything you're comfortable sharing. If there's one thing that pops up that is challenging that 15% of you, can we trim that down to like 20%, or 10%, let's say?
Yeah. For me, let's see. I think like I find myself overwhelmed a lot,
Hmm.
right? Where I feel like I want to do all of these things and it just doesn't feel like there's enough time to do all of them.
All the time. Yeah. It's the resources thing, right? If you
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
resources, you don't have time. If you have time, you don't have resources.
Yep.
What
Yep.
what mental switch will disengage that, do you think?
I think maybe just that trust that what's meant to be completed will be completed, that leaning into that.
One of those, you're never handed anything more than you can handle. I'm going to reach over here. I've got a bunch of sticky notes that I have all over my studio. This is
Uh-huh.
this one I did last year. Changed my life, dude. Changed my life. And it's right here where I look at it quite often. And it's one of these things because I move like you. I move quick. And I'm like, oh my God, there's so many things to do. And there's so many wonderful things. We have the publishing house. We've got all these, like, so many amazing things, right? But this idea of just slow down, this idea of like, you go faster when you slow down. It's something I've really embraced lately, and it has changed things so much. It's taken the need to run circles around stuff out of it, and it's just enabled me to just sit down and focus. And I've found again that I'm moving so much quicker because I, number one, don't feel overwhelmed. It just because then you're able to be quiet enough to go to the next intuitively guided thing. You're like, okay, what's next? You know, what am I conscious of now? What's my next greatest where I want to go? But if I'm moving too quick or something like that, or have too many things, or the feeling of overwhelmed is usually due to this accelerated pace. And I find it if I can just slow down, dude, take a couple deep breaths and go, you know, walk around outside for a minute or something like that. And then you come back and it's this accelerated pace, but calm, like this non-anxiety filled. That's when you kind of regain this time thing. That's an interesting one.
Yeah. The other piece of that, and I've had this message a lot lately, so I've been opening to this, is that the angels will say, you need to let people help you.
Yeah.
You know,
Hey, on your team, huh?
that part was hard for me.
Oh, God, it's opening your soul, you know, because what you're
Yeah.
doing now is so you, it's everything. It's you. Dude, I totally get this, by the way. We could swap stories on this. It's just one of these things to where opening yourself up in that way. And it's this idea of it wasn't King Midas, was it? The one that thought he could do everything, so he just did everything on his own and didn't delegate anything, and then he died because he just overworked himself. And it's this interesting your ability to surrender in that way has been one of the biggest things for me spiritually. So what are your thoughts on surrender when it comes to your higher self spiritually? Like, how do you frame that when people ask about it or you explain it? What surrender means?
I think that it's truly making the decision to hand it up. It's that decision to say, me in my human form, as I stand right now, doesn't know how to do this, doesn't know how to navigate this. And that's been a lesson I've learned many, many times. I've gotten much better at surrendering it sooner, right? Because I think that that's where that's like part of letting people help, right? Is letting God help, letting the universe help with that as well. And so, I have personally learned to not let myself get to that place where I'm so overwhelmed, so stressed out that I finally just kind of as a last resort say, I don't know what else to do, so I surrender this, right? And I've learned to start to do that sooner.
Yeah, the way I've heard it put, I love the way you said that, by the way. You nailed my perception of this. It's like the man in the maze, a Native American indigenous. There's a little necklace I'm pointing at over there that's hanging from a tour I was on. You can't see it, but it's a dude in a maze. And the whole idea, the concept there from the indigenous perspective is that you're the man in the maze, or you're the entity in this maze. And this reality is such a thing. But there's a higher version of you that's over the maze. It can see everything. It knows how to point you through this thing. All you got to do is go, hey, I don't know where to go next. Instead of bumping into walls or instead of taking wrong turns and flipping your higher self off, like, why won't you help me? It's like, dude, if you just get quiet, we got you, you know? And so that's what this feels. And you nailed it with this idea of surrender. It's just, hey, from my perspective, this is where I'm at. And that's where that co-collective creative and trust process comes in. And this is like the biggest thing for this. I'm in the middle right now of my biggest surrender moment and full flow. And I'm not stressed. Like, it's this fascinating thing to where before I thought I was in surrender and thought I was in flow and stuff, and I was not. I feel the difference now. So that's the thing, is how do you know when you're in flow?
I think that it's a feeling. I think that it's also a trust, right? You don't feel the fear in the same way. It's not that, like, I think that we do feel, or we can feel, a lot of fear when we're in flow, because that can be very scary. But I think that you feel less fear. I think that you feel supported, and there's just this knowing, like, I'm going to lean into this and I'm going to be taken care of.
So interesting.
Yeah. I love, like, flow is so it's a tough lesson to learn. I think at first it's very connected to surrender for me. But once you get there and you see how divinely supported you are, you want to do it again and again and again, because that energy feels so amazing.
Yes.
I like to start my day every single day. One of the first thoughts in my mind is, God, what would you have me do and how would you have me help?
It's awesome.
Show me today. I ask you to show me that today, right? Because to me, that's flow. To me, that's allowing myself to be led, to be used in the best way possible for the time that I'm here in this experience.
Awesome. What a great answer.
Yeah.
We've spoken a bit about intuition here this evening, and I'm just curious what you feel your intuition's greatest asset is for you. Like, what's your favorite part about your intuition?
My favorite part. I think it's this ability to know, right? It's this ability to trust. It's this awareness that we're not here alone, right? Because when we're tuning into our intuition, we have to acknowledge the fact that that comes from somewhere. And then as we acknowledge that that comes from somewhere, we have to acknowledge the fact that there is an energy in some way, shape, or form that is helping to lead us, that is helping to guide us and helping to support us. And to me, that's just incredibly magical, because we're never, ever alone.
Yeah. And it seems like I've heard some folks that'll focus on well, I trusted my intuition and it led to this, and that all this stuff fell apart. I'm like, well, where's the gift? Where's the gift in it? And it seems like your discernment, after a while, your intuition will say, look, yes, I'll know. Like, if I know, if I say, all right, I'm leveling up or I'm calling in something, I know what that means. That means some shit's about to go down. And that means, like, if whatever I'm not a vibrational match for, whatever is too heavy for me to really ascend and to get to that next thing, it's not going to happen. And I can feel this like unbinding with it, to where it's just this you could feel it sort of snap at you, in the moment. You're like, okay, look, this is for you, you're going to be guided through it, but there's still this like feeling of it in the interim. And it's tricky, even with all of our awareness and all the things that we're like, oh, we're source and we have angels protecting us and stuff. You're still in the damn maze, and it still feels very real and very heavy, and it feels like sometimes your spirit guide is kind of screwing you over. So that's the thing. A lot of folks, I feel, have this communication with something, and it leads them down the path they need to go, but it sucks, and so how do you help folks with that breakover period, like to let them get past the things that suck, to get through the thorns on the outside of the forest so they can get to the middle where the magic is? Do you have any advice for helping folks get over that, bridge that gap in resistance?
I think sometimes it's helpful to take a look backwards, right? This is how we also can understand how our own unique intuition works, because when we can look back and we can say, how did I know that? Or, I had a sense about that, how that tells us about that. But I think to look back and to have a sense of where we felt intuitively guided in certain circumstances in our life, right? And when we have some time, some perspective on a situation, and we can look back and we might see where we're being led into a situation in the past where that led to some more challenges at first, right? But then what did that lead to? And then what did that lead to? And then what did that lead to? Because a lot of times intuition is not like this straight, direct line. It's step by step by step by step. So if we can look at the big picture of that and look at where all of the steps collectively led us, then we see how divinely supported we are, how guided we are, and how, even though that maybe felt like a mistake or felt off in some way at that time, how had that not happened, this wouldn't have happened, and this wouldn't have happened, and this wouldn't have happened, and I wouldn't be here now where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, it's the if you give a mouse a cookie of events,
Uh-huh.
you mess
Yeah.
with brush the teeth,
Yeah.
milk, all that.
So it's like, if my intuition guided me then it can guide me now. And part of that is trust, but also part of that too is our experience currently is what is the manifestation of our past, right? And so sometimes it takes a while for the energy to catch up. So I find a lot of people get frustrated with that piece too. Like, I listen to my intuition and these things, that this pattern that just keeps repeating in my life happened again for me. but it's a matter of continuing to follow along that path and to continue to try to create a higher vibrational energy in our lives, to create better thoughts, to create a different perception of the world, that over a little bit of time we start to have a different experience. But there is a little bit of a delay, or sometimes it takes a while for that to clear out.
Yeah, the damn echo, as they say, right?
Yeah.
What's your quickest echo time? Have you done like a turnaround? Have you marked these, by the way? Do you do this? I kind of do this. I'll mark like a change that occurs, and then when I mentally change, and then when it manifests, or the energy, I feel the energy embodied in my life. Do you do this? Do you kind of declare and then track, or?
I don't, but that sounds like fun.
I will do this, especially like the solstice. Some big shit went down, and then it was 4 days of just like, okay, got it. I'm leveling up, got it. And those are, I know when the shit hits the fan, the tower moments or whatever. Before, yeah, it got to me, and I hissy fit, and I threw hissy fits with that one, even at my most enlightened self. You have you got to vent it out, get it out there, and it's one of these things now with like when connecting with these moments, I see them for what they are. Even balls deep in this thing, I'm pissed off. I'm like, there was just one damn thing after another, and it was, oh, it's in threes, and I can count on that it's over now. And then the next day came, and a fourth one dropped on me. I was like, got it. And it's one of these just purely okay moments, like where I know it's for me. I know it's for me, and I know that the things falling apart only indicate the levels up, the level up that's to occur. And there's so many examples of this in music. Dissonance is a musician for a long time, and you use, like, we do it on purpose. You can do like a nasty chord that just sounds awful, and you're just like, oh, get that out of my ears. And anything that you play after it is beautiful and amazing. And it doesn't matter what the chord is, because it's complete, right? It's not what it was before. So exactly what you're saying, you got to know where you are to, where it came from, to know where you are. And so your idea of looking back and saying, look, yeah, this is where you are now, and this is what you feel, but you felt this before. You have other examples in linear time in your past that said, hey, number one, this too shall pass. You're going to get through this, and you're going to be not only that, but treat it as a gift, because it is. The way I look at it is I'm scrubbing all the shit that can't go with me for the level up. And so I know that whatever I'm experiencing needs to be vented, needs to be understood and integrated. So therefore I can move forward, not having that sandbag attached to me anymore. And so even in the shit though, I'm like, I know this is for me, and I'm still so in it. It just feels so real. You know what I mean? I don't know if I have a question with that. I think I was just sharing that with you.
No, it does. I think that that's everyone's experience at times. And that's like the heaviness, I guess, of Earth.
So do you feel and let me ask you, so in those moments though, knowing what I know about manifestation, I feel like I feel like we get to a point with this sometimes where we know too much and can self-sabotage. And there's sort of an ignorance is bliss when it comes to this stuff, because people that don't know anything about manifestation and don't know the limits that we're told that we have to get over to then manifest the things we want. If they don't ever go through this, if they don't ever put the panda suit on, they could just step right into these amazing lives, and they just manifest like this. And we know these people. You're just like, how the hell? And it's just like, I don't see any other way. Like, it doesn't make sense for me for it not to be that way. But that's something that, I mean, there've been several things on my list like that where I'm like, dude, you've got to get your shit together on this. You know what I mean? Like, figure this out. And it took so many Thought Ninja sessions and, really going in to do one thing and to get one sliver to where it's been explained to me 1,000 times, but I finally got it this time, or I feel like I've gotten it this time. I never have the hubris to say, oh, I figured this out, so we can just cross that off the list. I'm like, I'm cautiously optimistic that when something like this presents itself again, I'm going to absolutely, like you, 85%, I'm going to be able to go, I'm just looking at this differently now. And it's a beautiful thing. But man, like you said, it's a booger bear,
Yeah. And I think like there is something with manifestation about like finding that exactly right energy and tuning into that. And that can be difficult when you want something really bad. Like I always say, like, you can't manifest great things from thirsty energy, right? When we create that resistance around it when we want it really badly. And so sometimes it is like, I find for me and for a lot of people, it's sometimes when we let go of it a bit, when we're just like, I give up. I don't know. We've been putting all this energy into creating something, and we finally just like let go. And that's when it manifests. So it's like that sweet spot of the energy.
Those finger trap things, the more you struggle, the stucker you
Yeah.
get. It's like quicksand. It's like, like in a relationship, if you get somebody texting you 30,000 times, you're like, dude, I don't want anything to do with you. You know what I mean? So it's interesting, the game, that's being played here. Do you feel that we'll ever see people with superpowers in our lifetime, that to where like the belief that we can't physically like fly and stuff like that is just that, a belief, and that's the only thing that keeps people from flying around, and that maybe some kids coming up will be born with the idea they can fly and just be zipping around everywhere?
I think that it's very possible.
I think we're going to see superpowers in our lifetime, dude.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
2 superpowers you can have. Any of them, what? Go for it. What do you got?
Oh, let's see. Um, Definitely to fly, because that just sounds really, really cool.
Okay.
Um, let's see. I think that it would be really incredible to, the other part of that would be to like heal people, right? I mean, we already do that, of course, but to heal people in just like that instant, the way that Jesus healed people, you know? Yeah.
In the same way too, and there's a Jesus story, I'm pretty sure I told it last time, but it was right before he went and flipped the table over on the bankers and was all twisted about it. He was twisted before that. He just went and took it out on the bankers. Somebody else was pissing him off about something, and he was up on a hill with Judas and the disciples saying, dude, I'm so twisted about this. You like my impersonation of Jesus? Hey, I'm so twisted about this shit. And he points at a fig tree and he says, you shall never bear fruit again, and you will whittle and die. And then turned around, and like that was his first order of business. Then he went and flipped tables over with bankers, right? But they came back after he settled down, he cooled down or whatever, came back to that spot, and the tree had withered and died. And one of them asked him, he's like, dude, Jesus, man, what's up with this tree thing? And he looked at him and he said, well, yeah, obviously I said it, and if you say this, that's what happens. He was like, and so too can you. If you say mountain, fuck off into the ocean, off it will fuck into the ocean. Yep. Jesus said, this is a direct quote. And that's the whole point, is this idea of belief. And that's what, programming, that we come into these places and we're told, hey, like, you can't fly, like gravity is the thing. Like if you fall off of that, you're going to die. And maybe, but the idea goes is that maybe if we're not told that and the limitations aren't introduced here, then it's not something that we entertain. And maybe this is what we'll be able to see pretty soon. I'm pretty hopeful.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's particularly the healing, I think that that's something that we are learning, that we will learn. And I think that our bodies are going to look physically very different in terms of just not carrying the heaviness, not carrying the physical issues with them. And I think that that's going to come in the form of a lot of people learning how to heal other people, but also learning how to heal ourselves.
Yeah.
So to me, that's like going to be like the superpower.
That's what it is, right? You heal yourself first, and that's how you heal everybody else. It's this idea, this toroidal field that's sort of spitting out your existence as it occurs based on what you think. And so if you point around at your world and you say, this is broken, this is broken, this is broken, it's a lot of something in you that's broken, right? So the idea is to go within, fix all these things, and then you come out, emerge out of this cocoon into maybe a new reality from having timeline jumps so much that you walk into a world where you don't see things broken, and your eyes are just gained towards opportunities and beauty and love and how to be of the highest service. And it is changing you. That's what's so fascinating, because I think that, I call these temporary truths, right? Like when manifestation and stuff like that, like you get into these ideas that you have to, like The Secret, right? I felt like I went through that with Rhonda Byrne 20 years ago, whatever, 15 years ago. And I was like, I screwed it all up. I didn't do it right and whatever. And I sort of swore it off. But the thing about it is I needed to be told that, to do those things in that way, to get to the point of understanding the next step and to learn that those were just temporary truths. And so again, it's this idea that like everything we're learning here is a temporary truth. And this is why also when you said that, reality can be flexible, that's fine. That's, I think, one of the biggest marks of really spiritual maturity, is your ability to just sort of have this realm be things and be okay with it, because you understand that there's a greater experience to be had here. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And we're all creating the experience together too, right? So it's constantly moving with us, which is really cool too.
What do you think of this idea that people are just healing constantly as an addiction, and that maybe like we're all well past healed, and that maybe there's a point that we get to where you don't have to be constantly healing shit. Maybe you get back, you've healed all the different parts of you, Do you think that that's a cycle that can be an addiction or a perpetuated thing? Is like, oh, I have to heal, I have to heal, I have to heal. But maybe like then you just manifest things to heal, right? Even though you're already healed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that like deep down, we're
Interesting
all
thing.
healed and well anyway, but
Yeah.
that here in this world that we're not, or that there's things to heal from, or things like that. So we step away from that energy all the time. But like the core energy is us healed and whole and in energy of the extension of God, source, divine, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn. So you get on the other side, right? You're done with this life. What's a
Mhm.
question that you would like the answer to?
Ah, I think that when we shift over there, that the work it's like going to be just instant knowing, right? So I think that we'll know all of the answers. But one thing that I think is so interesting to me is like the pyramids and the things that are set up here on Earth. I want to understand that. Like that's just fascinating to me.
Yes. This is
What's
like
that really about?
this is
Because I
one of my
think we tap into that, but I don't think we fully get it.
and it's so interesting. I've had quite a few folks on the show that have different opinions on what the pyramids are, and they've done some phenomenal work. Guy Jeff Drum, shout out Jeff. He actually moved to Egypt recently, and this dude feels that they were chemical manufacturing plants, and it's fascinating when you look at it this way because it doesn't like. He had a chemical engineer actually look at his work and debunk it. He goes, dude, I will give you money. Just look over this. Please debunk this. I feel like I'm going crazy. Not only could the chemical engineering professor not debunk it, but he wrote the foreword for the guy's book. And so his like ability to sort of look at these things and say, this is potentially what it is, but also it's a yes, and it doesn't rule out that there were also probably or possibly electric, had something to do with electricity or electromagnetism in some way being built over an aquifer, like Tesla's tower, and then with the piezoelectric properties of the materials they use to build the thing. So stuff like that is fascinating. What
Mhm.
do you think when it comes to the pyramids? What's your favorite theory? Like, you don't have to plant your flag or anything. This is
Uh-huh.
our field of supposies. Let's go pick some flowers of supposies and just have fun. So what do you suppose your favorite one about the pyramids is?
I mean, I feel like it was when I tune into that, it feels like some way to connect, right? It like feels like a gateway. It feels like some way to hold a particular energy to create some form of an energy portal, where there's like it feels like an energy highway to me.
Yes.
Yeah,
So do you think that they were destroyed on purpose, or do you think there was some sort of natural thing?
I think on purpose.
Do you really? Oh, that's so cool. Do you
Yeah.
think on purpose from like humans or on purpose from like something else?
I think humans being led by something else.
Scandalous. Do you think
Yeah.
that they'll ever be restored to their glory? Have you heard that conspiracy theory that if the pyramids, like, okay, let's say that the pyramids have always been here, okay, and that the Earth or this realm or whatever goes through these cycles. I call it speed dating with Gaia. It's like maybe reptilians had their shot here and they had 10,000 years, whatever. And then a flood comes in or plasma apocalypse, something gnarly. I think plasma apocalypse would be way more metal. It'd be cool as shit. You just hear metal music playing while this plasma just scars everything. Anyway, so this idea is that, this world just ends in a way and it's cyclical, but the pyramids have always been here for some reason. Like we just show up in a realm, we get our speed dating with Gaia, there's shit laying around, there's blocks of stuff. And that humanity gets to a point, or any civilization that's here for long enough gets to a point to where they figure out what the pyramids were used for. They rebuild them. They find the capstone, restore it to their glory. And then whenever they get the capstone up and they set it on, everything explodes and it resets reality back to zero. And so it's sort of this idea that humanity will progress through this, figure it out. And then once they complete a building block, everything resets. And so it's kind of like a cosmic joke. You know what I mean? These things are here as a puzzle for us to build and to figure out.
Huh?
But when we do it, it resets. And sort of maybe that's then our exit out of the game. Maybe that's how we prove that we don't need to be here anymore and go through these karmic lessons, is when we restore the pyramids, we figure this power out, and then we're out of the simulation. Something cool like
That's so interesting.
that'd be fun. Because
Yeah.
Like the coolest thing about anything that we talk about with this, by the way, is not falsifiable or provable. So you can't like sit here and go, this is what's happening, because like no one can on anything, by the way. Like even experts, I can Google you right now to absolute top experts that say, one will say never eat eggs ever. Like don't ever fucking touch eggs. They're a mistake from nature. Never eat them. They're going to kill you. Another one went to the same school. They probably had the exact same GPA. Will say eat eggs every fucking day. What are you talking about? Right. And so these are experts in their fields that have completely different observations of reality. And we're told that these are experts. So which one do we trust? You know, they're saying completely different things. So this is, whenever I think of things like this, like there's no real consensus reality to this place in my mind. Like I think that there's sort of a co-collective creation where there's opportunities here. And as you gravitate towards those in your family, your tribe, like us here, then you sort of level up in these ways to where your reality gets a little more firm and solid, almost like a piece of clay, and you're molding it into the right way. But it doesn't feel like this dire thing that is just gonna, I don't know, like it's some sort of thing you could screw up kind of a deal, you know what I mean? But I love this idea of these deep thought experiments with to where you can really go down this stuff, because you can't prove that it's not. Same thing with the flat earth sort of a thing. This is why it's so fascinating to me, and why people look at what NASA is pointing out and come up with the flat earth sort of analogy. It's like, dude, well, you guys are faking everything. So what are we supposed to do? You know what I mean? It's one of these things to where it's like, how can you not turn away from something like that and start suspecting? And this is where you get ideas like flat earth or realm or simulation or something, is you have examples in your actual reality from authority figures that are saying, here's what's going on. And then there's a glass of water sitting on the ISS's table, like right there. You're like, hang on, you're faking this. Like, why? Like, what are you doing? And so there's these things here that sort of point out to you, hey, this is what's going on, but they're obviously fake. Do you think that that's on purpose, or do you think that they really feel like they're pulling things over on people?
I think maybe a little bit of everything. You know, I think that there are energies that would want to create confusion. But I also think that, you know, we all have our own reality. We all have our own experience, and we're all experiencing it differently. And so this is where our intuition is really, really key. This is why it's so important for every single person to be tuning in with that, because I think at the end of the day, the answers to what's best for me, or what should I do, or what's true, has to come from within ourselves. You know, there's no other person that can tell us our truth. We have to tune in and listen to that and let ourselves be led, because what may be true for you may not be true for me. What may be best for you may not be best for me. And so it's like that tuning in and listening is so key. It's our navigational system for our experience here on the planet.
Yeah. And it seems the standard of ubiquity is what seems so interesting when you start to look at the program aspect of this, like fitting everyone into this same box, sort of an idea, you know, that you should be this way because that's the standard that we've, you know, held or whatever. And then that quote I've loved, I forget who said it, but it's being well adjusted to a sick society is no measure of good health. And I mean, you know, for a long time there, you probably felt that you couldn't tell people about your gifts and what you can do and all of that. Do you remember a switch being made to where you did feel comfortable and confident being able to share that and what that was like?
I kind of eased into that, because that was it was definitely when that came back for me and I was starting to see auras and angels. It was a little strange because I was doing counseling sessions with people and they had angels standing there with them, or I was seeing their aura, right? And so it became clear pretty quickly that I had to make some changes in terms of what I was doing so that I could start to acknowledge that. But also, that felt uncomfortable. When I first started doing services, I wasn't necessarily acknowledging that stuff. And I wasn't necessarily shouting it from the rooftops. This is what I'm doing, and this is what I'm connecting with. I kind of eased into that, you know, coming out of the metaphysical closet, I call it.
Yes.
Yeah. It wasn't like all of a sudden one day I just shared that. I kind of eased into that. And what was interesting though to me was that I thought that people were going to be surprised, or I would get kickback or things like that. And I'm sure that things were said, but what was most interesting to me is like eventually what was reflected back to me was that people were like, what do you mean? Like, you were always like this. What do what do you mean? Like, what do you mean this is new, or this is new and weird? You know, like, you were always this way. And I had that happen when I went to a high school reunion. That came up in the conversation, and somebody said, but what do you mean? You were always like this? You know,
Wow.
and I kept having experiences like that with people that I had known for years, or known on and off through the years, that were able to reflect that back. So I think that other people see these things in ourselves before we do sometimes.
You absolutely have this light about you, and that's what I'm curious about, because you have this glow, you know, you have this energy that's obviously there. And so have you always felt that you've had that, or was that something that just sort of switched on one day?
It's something that people have always said about me. I
Right.
definitely think when I was going through that period of what I call sleepwalking my way through life, that I was more disconnected from that, right? I didn't have that same spiritual connection. I wasn't having those experiences, but I think that the light was always there. I just think that we turned it up quite a bit.
You dim it a little, huh? With those
Yeah.
damn.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Have you done any jumping into your Akashic or Akashic? How do you pronounce it, first of all? Is it Akashic or Akashic for you?
For me, it's like,
Akasha?
uh-huh.
Okay, got it. And you know, the thing was, I interviewed Dr. Irvin Laszlo. Have you ever heard of him?
Mm-mm.
Guy's amazing. You would love him. Hungarian physicist, like written over 100 books on the Akashic or Akashic, and he calls it the one that everybody else doesn't. And so I sort of started calling it that way. Either way, Akashic. Have you been in there?
I have in some meditations before. It's so in my experience, and I've led people into meditations during sessions into there as well. So it's the same thing that we keep talking about, where we all experience it differently,
Yeah.
right? So there always seems to be like some form of a gatekeeper, kind of like checking in, like, what are you doing? You know, what are you looking for, and kind of checking in on the energy. But then there's some kind of library, some kind of usually that is represented through books, but it depends. Some kind of document where people are connecting with. But yeah, I've even seen it in different ways when I've connected.
Wow. Have you done any past life work with yourself? Or
Mhm.
had anybody work on you? Okay. Do you want to share any with us?
Sure. So I have it's been more like taking a look at different ways that I want to heal myself. Like I've had issues a lot with throat chakra stuff, and for years, like, that was difficult even for me to speak. I was incredibly shy, painfully shy. But like, speaking was always difficult. So I took a look at that with past life stuff, and had this vision of actually like having my throat slit in a past life.
Damn.
Yeah. So like, but when I was able to connect with like that memory of that really helped me to start to heal around the throat chakra and start to be able to connect with that more and open that more.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing the insight you can get from that kind of stuff.
Yep. And I've seen past lives like as an angel. I've had like glimmers of that before. So that's
Yeah.
really interesting. Very different. Like it's just light. It's just an energy. It's just an awareness. So it's difficult to process through my human sense of that. But I've seen that.
You almost get like this idea that you get two experiences here. You know, I kind of, and I don't want to pigeonhole us into this. It's just an observation from feelings that I get, that you get the super aware of everything and know it all. And that gets boring after a while. And then you get the need to forget so that you can have a break from knowing everything, but that's stressful as shit when you're in it. And so there's like this interesting day and night that seems to occur with consciousness in this cycle of physical reality. It's like it experiences itself for a little while here and then needs to go to sleep and rest and integrate. But even that, you know, you can't sleep forever, right? It gets boring. And then you wake up and then you want to do something else, because it's like this, it feels like this expansive force, like this energy that just wants to create and live and experience. So it's interesting, this sort of like grass is greener feeling that we get. Do you feel like that there's a perspective of a middle ground there, to where there's some sort of physical element, but no danger, and you could just create from an amazing place with no sort of compunction of knowing it all and still getting to experience, but also not with the heaviness of the, I don't know, being so in it, if that makes sense. Is there a
Mhm.
level, do you feel like in between that we get to chill at?
I think so. I mean, I think that that's what we're working toward as a collective, is to
Yeah.
be able to do that more. Yeah. And
When you
that's
said
part
that,
of, oh, go ahead.
there's like you're also breaking up again. Apologies for the internet connection. When you said that, it just made it's a ping. It's one of those light bulbs that goes off, and it's sort of like this. Of course, like you would have this experience of the void, right? To where you'd be nothing at all, with no physical reality to compare yourself to at all. So then you create physical reality, experience yourself through it. But even in that, you realize, like, we are here from our perspectives, from our feeble perspectives, right? That there's improvements that can be made, and that there are ways that we can integrate, like, and not have it either or. This idea of either or. It's either, like I was talking about, it's either like you forget everything and then it's really tumultuous and whatever, or everything and it's boring. So like it feels like this integration, but you needed to go and be, plucked or kicked from your cloud almost, to fall all the way down, to experience it all the way up, to know what that integration process would be like. And so it's interesting when you frame it that way, that's what this expansion is this idea of that integration of those understandings and energies. You just like excited the hell out of me. That's like a beautiful way to look at this.
Yeah. It's what we're here to do right
It
now, here in this time.
You've reframed the 5D thing for me. I don't know why I had a difficult time visualizing it until you just said that. It's one of those things you unlocked it. You know what I mean? It's like you opened a chest and this Pandora's box worth of awareness came out from it, because it's like a duh. It's and that's a Laurel Erica. I had her on the show. Her definition of an epiphany is a sudden recognition of the obvious. And it seems like, yeah, that's why it's so heavy. That's why you would experience it in that way, because you need to walk up the ladder. You need to know, you need to walk to the other side of the room to know what the room is. You can't stand on one side of it and say, I've experienced the room. You need to take your lap. Man, just the way you phrased it though makes it it makes it more of a, and I've thought about this too. So I just wanted to ask you this as well, about this idea of like, do you think it's all been created and figured out, or do you think we're figuring it out and creating it as we go?
I think that there's an intention, an energetic intention that we're heading toward, right? So I don't know that there's a specific plan exactly, but I think that we're moving in that direction toward that. And so it's being figured out as we move in that direction.
Does that make you feel uneasy at all, that it's not just sort of a, yeah, we know where it's going, this is a play that's been scripted out, it's going to be fun, everything's going to work out, and that it's really more of a, we're cutting a tunnel through bedrock, basically, that we don't know what's on the other side as an entire consciousness unit? Like, is that unsettling to you, that there's sort of a question in it?
It isn't because of the destination, right? That we know the destination, we know where that's heading. It's just a matter of like, I think our experience, or the timing of, or how hard that has to be, or how much easier that can be. Like, this is where we're sort of making these decisions and deciding as a collective, what's that going to look like?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is exciting when you say it.
Uh-huh.
Because some people want to know that, that this is like a videotape that you put in, and then you just hop into the character, experience it for a little while, and then you know how the movie ends, right? But I like more the way that you put it, because it's not predetermined. There are wild card variables, but you do know that it ends great, right? That it ends well, but the script's not written yet. You're writing it as you experience it through whatever you want. I
Yeah.
For some reason, darling, the way you put it, it rang a bell in a different way. Like, I've heard it, a bunch, that type of thing, but again, the way you put it with this specific time just rang the bell. So thank you. Damn, well done.
Yeah. Good. When
What do
I
you Go ahead.
when I tuned in with the angels one day, when I was really, really frustrated with some things that were happening, and I just like was complaining really to them. And they kind of handed me my ass back with that, because they said, do you not understand how amazing it is to be here on this planet right now?
Yeah.
And basically, like, the energy that I got from that was like this sense of like, it was almost like a lucky ticket, right? To get to come to Earth now. Like, we're here, like, we've got the best tickets. We get to witness and be a part of the ascension of the planet, and how amazing that is. And so it was basically like, do you have any idea how amazing that is? Do you have any idea how lucky you are that you were chosen here in this time to be a support as we move through this? And each and every human being that's here now is a part of that.
Wow.
So beautiful.
It is. It's so comforting. It's like such a perspective. It needed to be, it needed to be a shakeup almost. It's sort of like you're being ungrateful. Like, look at what's around here. Yes, you're in it. It's heavy because you're in it, but that's what you signed up for. And like, this is the time to be here. Like, you wouldn't want to sign up during the Dust Bowl. That would have sucked. Actually, one of my past lives that I looked at with Amy Belair, I'm connecting you with her already. She's amazing. She hopped into my Akashic as well, and saw a lifetime with my wife and I as well. And we were in this horrible Dust Bowl situation where like all of our kids died and it sucks, and we get all this scarcity stuff from it. And it's like, why, you can think of almost that all of your past lives incarnated then so that you could buy your ticket now. You earned your ticket from all the past lives that you've done and all the Dust Bowls that you went through, all the times that your throat got slit and now your throat chakra is messed up. You experienced all of those and went through all those training lessons. And it's almost like merit badges. I went through the 30s. I went through the 1500s in Greece, whatever. And you have all these little merit badges that add up to the skill sets you have now to really be here. And so it really is sort of a reward, is a beautiful way to phrase it. Like, you've earned this, like this is a gift for you. And it's not a punishment. And really, when you shift that I feel is again to this idea of we're constantly healing, we're healing. Like, no, you did all of that. Your superpowers are all accumulated. You went through all the shit lives. Like, now flip the script on it and just enjoy and just decide that you're not doing that shit anymore and move forward. It's an interesting process to have that sort of, discernment, and even to be able to have the conversations we are now in this time. Oh, what a cool time to be alive. Like, thank you for, I've got a great disposition about this place. I'm grateful for every breath, but really, like, you just put a new spin on it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We came here to be light holders in that way, right? And so you're right, like that we work toward getting our vibration, or some of us, to a certain level where it's like we were intentionally placed all around Earth and inside the Earth and all of these things to create a specific frequency. And it's moving.
Yeah.
We're watching it move, we're watching it change.
Man, it's just so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Have you gotten to ask your angels any sort of questions that only they would know, like about giants in our past, or what the Smithsonian's throwing at the bottom of the ocean that they don't want us to know about and stuff like that? Have you been able to get any sort of insights on that?
Not directly. So I haven't had direct messages about that, but sometimes I'll feel into that stuff. It's been interesting for me because remember I said that I was created to see the best in everything, right? Yeah. So, over the course of 2020, I stepped into a whole other awakening for myself, right? Because like prior to that, I really operated from a place of most people are here to do good, and most people have good intentions, and really didn't feel the level of deception that's under the surface of everything, right? And so now I just have like this sense of things. I had this whole expansion and have been exploring that and I'm looking at things from different perspectives, right? So they've helped to show me almost like indirectly, right? Like where I was sitting and watching things on the news and literally seeing like the lies cross people's paths in their lives. And I was like, what's up with that, right? So it's led me to this whole series of questions and this exploration of that. But I don't necessarily get like that direct guidance from that. It's more like, we want you to understand. We want you to see, you're ready to see now and understand that you can't just accept everything at face value. You have to like feel below the surface now. It's time to feel below the surface and to start asking questions about things, and to start to ask yourself, how do I feel about this thing that's being presented to me? And what's the real story behind that? So like, I've been in on this whole journey of that the past few years, of really asking a lot more questions in that way.
You know, and this is something that ayahuasca did for me, that not everybody obviously has to or needs to choose to experience to get this, but it just totally wrecked my ability to bullshit myself and to lie to myself. And it's with that understanding where I was like, number one, why the hell was I doing that so much? And it was a safety mechanism, survival mode for whatever years. And it makes sense, you know, looking back, and I have the love and grace for it. But it's one of these things to where, like, on the other side of that now, it's such an awesome, and again, these temporary truths, right? Like, you need that to survive for a little bit, but it's no longer, you can release it, you know? So what's one of the biggest things in your life that you released for you that made one of the biggest impacts in your life? Just something, an idea you had, a belief, a habit, anything like that, that you were able to see for what it was, release, and it's just changed your damn life.
For me, I think it's been this need that I felt when I was younger, to hide, to be quiet, to not speak, to not express, to not have a voice. That was like a big thing that I've noticed throughout the course of my life that I've worked through. That has been really, really important for me. It's almost like, well, I did know on some level that I was moving in a particular direction. Like, I can think about how, for me, like when I first went to school, I was painfully shy to the point that I didn't speak at all for months and months and months to anyone, and just wasn't, that was really difficult for me. And then as I got a little bit older, this fear of public speaking, to the point that it was so debilitating that I would avoid taking classes where I would have to do a speech or whatever. But there was also this awareness that I had to prepare to be able to do that very thing that I was afraid of.
Right.
And so I remember intentionally in 7th grade signing up to run for student council, not because I wanted to do student council, but because I knew I'd have to speak.
Right.
Or, you know, as I got a little bit older, signing up to like sell things where I would have to talk, or where I would have to, I would volunteer for things at work where I would have to go teach and do those things. And I would be an absolute wreck every single time that I had to do it, or to sign up for classes where I had to do those things. But every step of the way, it was like this preparation for that. But that's been a really important progression for me, a really important release for me, because as I've leaned into doing it, even though I feel afraid, it's led me to continuing to expand on that. And now I do speaking events. Now I do videos like this, and I create videos, and I let that the angels really speak through me, or I let those messages be delivered through me that I think are really important. Yeah.
Do you feel that this was traced back to a specific time period in life, to where you were being very yourself and just excited to share something? You were told to be quiet or told to sit down, and then you didn't feel it was safe to be you after that? Is that where you feel like that seed was planted? Or do you feel like you were always like that?
So I don't know if it was a specific experience. I think that I've always been so sensitive to energy and so aware of what other people need, that I never wanted to interfere with that or to block that in any way. And I think that somewhere very early on, I decided that if I speak, if I ask for what I need, if I express, that I'm somehow impeding on other people's needs. Like, it was this sense of other people are more important, their needs are more important than mine.
Just like, and this is just an observation of my reality that females seem to be this way. My wife is like this with not worthiness issues per se, but just yeah, worthiness. Like I have the right to be here, to take up space. You know,
Yeah.
these kind of things. Do you feel like it's a something that women are raised with, that idea of being seen, not heard, that kind of thing?
Sure. Yeah.
Do you feel like that when do you think that changed for you?
I think that that's something that has really changed us through the experience of doing it, right? Like of challenging that fear and doing it. And I, I can't think of a specific moment where that's changed. It's been more of this progression into like, okay, now because my angels have led me to continue to push myself out of my comfort zone constantly. I'm like, again, we're doing this, you know. But it's
Yeah.
like this awareness that I need to, and to move me further and further and further away from that energy.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, just this place, because then you think, maybe yourself, you decided, of course, to come in, be surrounded by those situations so that you could not only be there to be of service, but to thrive in that service and be very comfortable to be delivering your perspective. Because what you're here to speak about isn't like you giving us, I don't know, a speech on seropods or something that's like well established, and you're not like presenting new info that's like it's revolutionary. What you're talking about is fake, false information by a lot of standards, and stuff that would get removed from YouTube for being incendiary. And it's just this interesting, I mean, balance between the information that we have to deliver and how we grew up, the things that you can see that were interests of yours that now play such a big role in your confidence. And it seems like and it's interesting, which is why I asked, was it just this moment, or do you feel that it was this stair step in, which is probably the way that we would experience it, right? You wouldn't want just this like, because if you do, that's like that $400 million lottery, right? You just get this overwhelming amount of confidence and power, and you don't know how to hold it. So there's this, it seems to be a choice on your part, which is beautiful. And it seems I've taken this slow path as well, because there's a lot of things I feel like I'm ready for, and then I'm just like, oh, obviously not. And so, but it feels like this slow turn up of the, water, as it were, to get acclimated to this thing is the way to do this. And so whenever people come to you and they're just like, why doesn't it this? Why won't it hurry up? And how do you give folks the comfort in the process and to let them know, hey, it's a journey and that this is part of it? Like, what's your comfort with that?
I think that it's like about consistently tuning into divine source energy, right? Because when we are intentional about that, we feel that energy. We feel how we're supported. We feel that even though we're on a journey, that we are being supported and that it is leading us somewhere, right? So it's a lot of inviting them to get quiet, to listen to themselves, to tune in, to spend time in their own energy so that they can hear that, to meditate, or however they connect. But to take that time to have and foster that spiritual connection, I think is the very thing that carries us out of hardship and into this really embracing the journey that it is, because it is a journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just so challenging sometimes when you're in it.
Yeah.
It feels like you don't have access to the wisdom, even though we have it. You know what I mean? It's like a book you left at home when you're on a trip and you just can't pull the material out of your mind when you're in the shit. You're just like in it. You're like, I know this is for me. I know this is a test and whatever, blah, blah, blah. And, in those moments, I also do my best not to be tough on me, thinking that I'm going to manifest it 30 days from now. So do you find that there is a grace period? I sort of look at it as like the mirror dimension, or like you're out of play, like you're not in bounds when you're frustrated, you're just venting all this shit off. Do you feel that when you are in those moments that, yeah, that's what you're going to experience again because you're putting so much energy into the frustration? Or do you think that we have a grace period that we can vent?
So what I have been shown is that the angels will block some of that for us.
Okay.
Right. So that they that they do that a lot, right? Because our thoughts are constantly creating things. And I think that we allow our brains, even myself, like I allow my brain to go into places that's not at all what I want to create often. Right. So I think that they're like, that they block a lot of that. And the times that gets through is because there is some kind of a learning or growth or development in that for us. So they will allow it if it's for us in some way, shape, or form.
You did this, and when you did this, I pictured this angel just like me,
Yeah.
coming up with new cuss words and sending them off, and all the things I'm gonna do, and how pissed off I am at my old self, and all these fear-based things, and I'm sending them off, and it's just like, no, he didn't mean it. He didn't mean it. Okay, no, he's gonna be fine. It's like someone
Yep.
in the moment is telling, hey, it'll be fine. Just let him get it out. I like this idea. This is honestly very comforting to hear. And I like, though, that also some of the things that do slip out, they're like, no, let that one go by. He's gonna, that's the one that needs to go by, because all these other things were just, hang on, let's hold on to this. And it is, because I'll get in those moments and I'll even be in the shit. I'm just like, oh, and I'm going to see this again in a month. I know I'm creating this, but also I don't feel like that. I feel like there's some consideration, like you said. So again, you gave me some relief on it. And I hope some other folks too, to know that you just have, you can vent your shit out. You got to be able to be safe and be free and be human here. And your higher self, everything knows that, and so thank you again for that consideration. Because there's some things here that and I feel that the intellect on it, again, back to this sort of Dunning-Kruger effect. Have you ever heard of that term, the Dunning-Kruger effect? It was come up by a couple of educators, and what they said was named Dunning and Kruger, by the way. And they observed that the people who know very little are very loud and very confident about what they know, even though they know very little. But the people that are exceptionally intelligent are very quiet about what they know, because they feel insecure about their abilities to voice it. So it's this interesting energy here that's created such a fascinating environment for us, because you have all the, you know what I'm talking about here, just like, oh, I'm great at everything, man, I'm badass, and then they go out there and something, and then they present themselves this way. But again, it's a shit show. But it's these myriads of energies that, again, whenever you're able to see it like this, and you can take it for that, you get some comfort in it. It's like, I feel like whenever I'm in those moments, like, oh, fine, I'll see it again. But again, I think that there's a higher level of emotional intelligence you've offered here. And so I appreciate that. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So we've got about 4 minutes here before we wrap. And I can't thank you enough for this, Christy. This has been incredible. And I know you'll be presenting on Expanding Reality very soon. So all of us are looking forward to that. So in the few minutes that we have here, I'm curious to see what gets you out of bed every morning. Have the angels given you any insight that you can give us to what to look forward to, or be mindful of, or watch out for, and just what gives you hope? Any of those?
It's this idea of where we're heading, this earth that we're creating. And I hear a lot of really terrifying things about what people see in terms of where we're going. And that's just never what I'm shown. It's a time where people are more tapped into their intuitive abilities. It's a time where people really are experiencing what we would call superpowers. It's a time where we are creating this energy of heaven on earth. And I think that it's a progression, right? It's not tomorrow morning, we're not going to wake up and it won't be that way. But I think like there's a progression, and this is where we're moving. And so I love the vision of that. To me, that's really exciting. And I also just love this idea that each and every person that's here right now has a purpose, has a place, is a light holder here in this experience, and came here with a specific intention to bring their unique energy, or their facet of the collective energy, here onto the earth to create this thing together. And I can't think of anything more exciting than that. I love it.
I mean, how cool is this? This 50, Dolores Cannon idea. Are you familiar with Dolores Cannon's work, the 3D 5D thing? Do you feel like this is what's occurring, this split, to where there's like a physical, like 3D Earth is over here now and 5D Earth is over here, and that there'll be people that will physically be not in your reality anymore just because they're on a different Earth?
I don't think it's going to look like that.
I have a tricky time visualizing it. I really do.
Yeah, I think that it's more of our experience. I mean, I think that we already have that happening, right? Where people are having experience of hell on earth, where vibrationally they're just struggling and they're creating, unfortunately, from the energy. And unfortunately, that's their experience. Although I think that as things continue to progress, they're going to have the ability to connect more with higher vibrational energies, right? So to me, it's more vibrational in our experience now. I think that we're already experiencing that. And I think that we can all be working toward higher vibration, and that is going to change the experience that we have on earth. And once we hit like that sweet spot where there's enough light, I think that more people can have that experience. And that's where we get to see the really magical stuff.
God, like this is what I'm excited about, because this idea of like, you know, that my parents, for instance, won't be here. You know what I mean? This kind of thing, this idea of like that there'll be a physical split, that some folks just won't exist here. I have difficulty with that as much as I do with the this Archon soul trap idea that like the moon's trapping you here and you shouldn't go to the light. Have you heard about this?
No.
Okay, that's definitely something we'll talk about next time then. But all of these things, but to integrate them in this way and to see, you just give us a lot of hope with this, you know, with and not hope in the false hope sense, because the definition of hope is just right, false belief in something that you, or belief in something you don't feel will really come true. But like the message is really of comfort and peace, and your smile, your glow, just everything about this. I'm just grateful you're here and that you're healed and you chose to go through the healing and be of service in this way. And just thank you. Seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's like faith, you know, and that's, if we can hold that, that is going to move all of this along that much more quickly.
Christy Forsyth, discoveryourowakening.com. Guys, check it out. All the ways to find her located down in the show description. Cannot thank you enough. We're going to do it a million more times. I'm looking forward to all of it. Thank you
So much.